hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you too.
Great.
Komal, are we recording? Yeah. Can you see me?
I
I think
cannot yet. Oh,
yeah.
there we go.
I can see you too now.
I think you're turned. Ah, there you go.
Yeah. So I was asking you about these issues going on social media. Now, for example, in India, there are so many groups. We are as diverse country as it can be. So there are so many issues that are coming out of the public discourse, and we are having at some places we are having public outburst as well. In Mumbai itself today, we had few people, the laborers coming out of their homes, and they are basically migrants. So then there is again religion which has to come into play. So can you tell us more about what kind of tensions that you are having in Canada, especially on social media?
So, truth be told, I've been trying to limit my social media intake and to limit sort of where I receive information. And I know and recognize that that is definitely a place of privilege where people don't even have access to that information. I think that that is also one of the potential key issues that I was mentioning too, where, despite the fact that even the most marginalized individuals and communities, they will still have access to, a mobile phone and some form of data service to receive information. But
Right.
I am coming from a place of privilege where I can sort of shut those pieces off. That said, I do think that in in regard to sort of that negative like discourse piece, people, aside from sort of the racial pieces where there were, comments made or things like that, I haven't seen any sort of headlines in general at all about anything that was sort of dangerous or that, people are upset. I think the general sentiment, at least from what I can observe, is that people are really coming together, the sense of community, and this desire to want to help others. And it's nice to sort of see that being a new thing where there are, at 7 p.m., everybody goes out to bang their drums and to acknowledge and thank our frontline workers. We're seeing folks, even in our building here, a neighborhood sort of chat and figuring out how people can help one another. So I think maybe it's a combination of me closing sort of certain things out and also just being a fairly positive person that we're all in this together, where how do we then pivot our own personal thinking and our work to then look at, once the economy becomes operational again and we're in the recovery phase, what does that mean? So I haven't really seen too many negatives. Either people have jobs, are extra busy because they're in mode and trying to transition to working from home and raising children. So again, the privilege problems and like we're able to put food on the table and all of that, compared to how some of my colleagues and friends that I've been hearing in India, where the choice is, do you starve or do you get COVID? Like those are really real choices. And it really, as someone who works in the social impact space, it breaks my heart to know like all of these things are happening around the world, yet here we are, we have a home, we have food, we have our family. So that's definitely been a place of privilege. I definitely acknowledge that. And I think also the people who then are not working are finding, at least for the first few weeks, being challenged with a lack of motivation, where to go. There's so much noise. There was this coming together of all these lists, leveraging social media, sharing lists of what to do with kids, how to go to like get them back to school. Where do people find information to work out? And where do people find information of cooking different meals at home? Things like that you're sort of seeing. But yeah, in terms of public discourse, I would say it would really be limited to probably that community in the downtown east side that I mentioned, where there's increase in petty crime. There's there are people who, aren't able to open their their businesses so that they're operational. And I think at the beginning, there was this sense of fear, particularly again in Vancouverites, because I don't know how, whether or not you follow the hockey at all, but during the Stanley Cup riots back in, I think, 2012, I believe it was, there were riots, so they lost the Stanley Cup. Businesses were being broken into, like it was chaos for no reason, right? Over sports. So my friends and I were sort of joking. We're like, oh, when you go through the downtown core, and again, this is the first week of sort of the recommended lockdown, a lot of businesses were removing things off the front windows to remove the temptation. And I think there is a general fear that it was in recent history, citizens behaved badly, and therefore there's this fear, I guess. Yeah.
Now, going into some medical aspects of this COVID-19. So, what Canada is doing on that particular front? Have there been any news of developing some sort of medication or anything within Canada? Because we are not hearing so much from Canada on this front.
So I was sharing with you
So,
that
what
sort of funny joke
maybe
about.
I would like to also know about the figures. How many cases that you have found within the country, those are positive, and how many deaths that you have due to COVID-19?
So you're asking about the action around the development of sort of a vaccine or like medical treatment,
Correct.
and then you're asking about the number of cases that we've seen.
Correct.
So based on what I saw this morning, I just quickly skimmed the news. I believe that there was a couple thousand cases. I don't have the exact numbers because sometimes I get mixed up in regards to the number of cases in British Columbia versus the actual. I'm gonna shut the blinders off to tune out the noise. I felt that it wasn't super the number of cases, but the one trend that I did notice and have been watching is that the number of reported cases have been sort of pretty flat, or on a decline, and that's what they have been measuring since the 100th reported case. I think that the incremental percentage has been pretty streamlined. Now, in regards to the actual vaccine or medical interventions, as I mentioned earlier, there are a number of facilities in Canada that are working towards something. I haven't heard of any specific reported sort of vaccines or medical interventions that could be tested right now. Again, I don't work in that field, so I don't follow it closely. However, my understanding is that there are active folks who are actually working towards that in sort of the central Canada and eastern Canada. And I did hear, again, not trying to follow what the US is doing a lot of, but I did hear that there were medical, I guess, vaccines, or not vaccines, but the actual like medicine that people
Treatments,
could potentially take.
maybe.
Yeah. And I don't think that they've been trialed here. I mean, there's a number of cases of folks who have been COVID positive and have recovered. But I think what they've been using in terms of the actual medical intervention, I'm not 100% sure.
Right. That's okay. Completely okay. We can understand that. We are also not into so much into medical science or something, but we are getting used to these new words like quarantine. We haven't heard of this word at all so much earlier. Now there is a word coming into isolation and etc. etc. Then so many words and so many things that we have been hearing. Hydrochloroquine, for example. Now everybody knows about hydrochloroquine in India and USA because USA has asked for it, and India is one of the largest producer of that particular medicine. And supposedly it is found to be very effective treating COVID-19 patients. There has been much of debate, and we're listening to it. We are learning so many things every day, and we are at so many things also. So, moving further, I would like to ask you something about economy. So, what COVID-19 for Canada by the end?
So it's interesting you asked that because, of course, the government is optimistic and hope come operating that position to to sort of recover quicker. So there's no doubt in the what government thing they've been, very responsible and cautious with their spending because again, Trudeau is sort of her, although
Yeah,
he doesn't have majority government, it's an opportunity to be that political and doing over the last has been very positive. I do think that it will take a number of years to break because consumer behavior has changed a lot. So something that I've been doing a lot of personally has been tracking a lot of the trends and sort of my own involvement. And so working around what is the actual economic impact where unlike the United States, we're not printing more money.
right.
We're actually taking, loans out to then be able to provide our citizens with access to financial um, the government with the measures that they're putting in place in terms both in rules, small businesses and whatnot, best to try and help cushion that that impact. That overall there will be on me for sure.
Right. And since you have been working into social impact, now it is very obvious that government will be pouring money into economy. So, do
Mm.
you think?
I think over time, they're now being taken into consideration, and this essential sort of technological social innovation super cluster organizations are being pulled into. And so some of my clients that do work in this space are noticing that they obviously themselves need to pivot their business operations, but they are finding support that they're able to qualify for certain um, grants or certain access to capital and funding to help keep their operations
Mhm.
afloat. So I think that overall, the people who work in this sector, the people I've been speaking to locally, and also actually on the global front, like I don't know if you're able to dial into that call with CSIS, but I think people that work in this space are feeling hopeful and optimistic that now more than ever is the time where the world needs more social impact.
Right.
So leading up
Of
until
course.
COVID, they know that it's important and they're like, oh, it sounds nice. I guess we should do it, integrate it into our business
Mm.
practices. But I think now more than ever, people are like, yes, we
Right.
need to do it. We need to be intentional about it. And we need to actually put that as a part of our business model and carve out time and space and resources to dedicate to that.
Right. Very right. I do share your opinion.
And one other thing I should note too, and maybe you'll see that sort of surface in India as well, is there are certain social impact sectors or even, I guess, areas that are more impacted. So environmental sustainability is one of them.
Right.
So if you think about the consumer behavior that's being encouraged in terms of a change where um, in Vancouver, we're pretty progressive. We're actually like compared to the rest of Canada as well. Like everyone's sort of doing their own thing, but we banned straws recently. There's people go to the shopping centers with their own personal bags, for example, right? So there's all this COVID. No, so one of the grocery there's a place called Nada, like no Nada. That's like bring your own containers and you weigh it and then you fill the
Right.
products. I see that they're open shorter hours, but it's challenging for them because there's this potential increase of spread.
Right.
So all of the things that we put into place are being undone. And I'm seeing and reading that there are an increase of waste being littered in parking lots at the grocery stores. So the gloves, people are just throwing it away. Garbage cans have not been removed. I don't understand why masks and gloves are being strewn about
They
on the
shouldn't be.
streets. So no, there's this interesting way of behaving for humans. Your other question about public discourse and stuff. There is a discourse with Mother Nature as well too. And I was reading how on the in seeing an increase in gloves and mask loadings, and things like that, and straws. So I actually don't know what's going to happen after all of this. Like, that's something I've been thinking a lot about. And also something that might be in India is this notion of gender inequality. So one trend that I've noticed, where obviously in unemployment, typically work in the service sector. So if you look at the whole actual number of people who are unemployed, probably 2/3 of them are women. And then if you think about all of the work that people have been doing to eradicate, the pay equity and to toward gender equality in the workplace, increase in, it's going to happen in that space as well, where now women who children, all of these things, completely new jobs and new sectors, are they have to settle that they were 2 million that were unemployed. Very, very astounding number. Where I dig up sort of the most recent numbers I saw. Like I mentioned, there was so much information coming of like thing. Yeah, it's really unfortunate, but I do think that the gen this is in the world, in our history, that we all share this,
Of course.
right? Yeah.
Very, very correct. So, on one of the points that you explained, environment degradation in Canada, we are having a very opposite and very beautiful experience in India. Yeah, I'll give you two instances where in Punjab, one of the states in India, they can see the Himalayas now from Jalandhar, which is 125 miles away from the city. So they couldn't see it because of pollution. Now pollution has so there has been no commute, nothing going on. So they can see the whole of the Himalaya ranges from their city. From the second instance, one of the most polluted rivers in the world, perhaps, is the Ganga, or as you call it, Ganges. So now there has been so many projects that the governments have been doing, the state government as well as the central government, and spending millions of rupees on cleaning of the river. And it has been reported that the Ganga has been cleaned up because of this lockdown situation, and it is a very beautiful thing to happen in India at least. So we are having this good aspect of this lockdown, and the public spaces are perhaps more cleaner as it used to be earlier 3 weeks ago. I couldn't go out, nobody can go out, so I don't know exactly about how clean they are, but we can expect that they are much more cleaner than it used to be 3 weeks ago. Now, going back to again an economic question, you mentioned about. I'd first like to ask you about the whole demand and supply thing. How about the whole commodity supply within the country? Are you getting commodities
Good question.
at your household? Yeah.
Yeah, I think for the most part, it's really not affected at all. I think initially there was a sense of fear in human behavior where there was a lot of hoarding of folks who would
Peer
go and
purchase.
purchase a lot of things. And for me, that also made me quite sad. Again, as someone who works in this space where there are lots of service workers that aren't able to go and shop at certain hours. And it was this sense of fear around sort of the 12th or 13th of March before this all hit, where I went to the grocery stores and it wasn't there because we didn't have all of the products, like particularly the canned goods and toilet paper and whatnot. It was because we couldn't ship them in and stock it fast enough because people kept buying it all up by the caseload. So that was this whole discrepancy between privileged and marginalized, where I think over time it was good that things kind of slowed down a bit. Shelves are being stocked. People are now settling into this new way of quarantine life where we can still go out to buy things. We just have to limit our exposure. So my own personal mentality was that I normally wouldn't eat a kilo bag of flour, but I do a lot of baking. And so I think it was the 12th, I had gone grocery shopping at 7 a.m. and purchased what I needed. And then I've only gone maybe 3 or 4 times to the grocery store since. And not because I was hoarding, but I bought what I needed to keep me at home so that I was not being an additional strain, right? So there are lots of people like myself who think like that, like a lot of friends who are like, oh, instead of everybody in this building going at the same time, we take turns. That has helped people as much because there are, I don't know, with the grocery stores when you're there's tape and stickers on the ground that indicate you need to be from everyone. And so there's a sense of calmness at the grocery store now. Like it was chaotic at the beginning, like everyone was going and it felt like there was not enough supplies, but there really is. And things are being restocked online, and you'll see consumer behavior differing as well too in regards to things like online shopping and Amazon, where in the past when you have Amazon Prime, it would come in a day or two, but now they're about a month out. And then consumer behavior has a very interesting way of dictating how things are being shipped out in terms of priority. So then there's loopholes. So if you're buying a book, that's not an essential item. But if you were buying hand sanitizer, maybe that is. So if you bought it together, your book will come with it. So people were learning how to game the system. So that was also, a fascinating thing to see. And just the things that would sell out. So more people are baking more at home. So you'll see trends of people baking and taking pictures of sourdough. And I was laughing with my friend because I was on the sourdough wagon last September, October, and I have been baking my own sourdough, but now everyone's making sourdough and you're sharing. Again, that's that sharing of the starter. So it's been, fascinating where people are sharing. Like I had friends who needed flour and I had this big bag, so I would give them flour. And then as a way of supporting local businesses as well too, we would continue to buy our coffee from local roasters and trying to help support them.
Right. That's a great input that you have been sharing. Again on the social impact front, now you have been telling us that our community is getting closer, and they have an understanding the values, etc. So, do you think any social innovation coming up uh, which would perhaps help the society in the
You know
future?
what? I do think so. I think that there is where people need to collaborate more and a sense of belonging and creating community through connectivity. So in terms of actual social innovation pieces, I think a lot of folks are looking for ways of how they can either pivot their businesses to then integrate more of this collaboration piece, and that they can find additional revenue streams and ways of giving back. So again, I go back to that hand sanitizer piece because this one organization that I support, where I mean, my husband really likes their vodka. So they were one of the quickest to then start producing hand sanitizer, but they were out of different ingredients. So they did a call out. And then I noticed that this one organization who does zero waste products, so they have an abundance of plastic containers, for example, they would then redivert, and then proceeds, the initial priority of distribution went to frontline workers and charities and folks in the downtown east side, so that marginalized community that I'm talking about. Whereas this distiller wouldn't necessarily have been so closely connected to this community, but now they are. And then as they ramped up their production, they had capacity to then sell the hand sanitizer. So they're taking the proceeds from those hand sanitizers and redistributing it back into communities. So I am seeing different pockets of like industries and businesses that are working creatively to collaborate and to come up with net new revenue streams. And then part of that revenue streams is to benefit marginalized communities or communities of need. And I think that people are more conscientious as well of certain communities. Where one other trend that I noticed, because I do work with some clients that serve that community, is that a consultant like myself, I've been trying to manage the noise and to show up where I can be helpful. That's my own personal passion of wanting to be helpful. But when I talk to them, I said, I'm here for you if you need my help as you serve these communities, but I don't want to add additional burden to you. And I think a lot of people are similar to me who work in the space. But the interesting thing is that they said to me, thank you, because people who don't normally work in this space, so knocking on people's doors being like, hi, I'm here. I know you need help. How can I help? I want to help. But there was just noise added on top of noise, because they don't even know how they can help. So they haven't been able to help, and now to help be financials and all of these. So I've been asking webinars and participating in ours. There's an increase. So a lot of the profits and charities and social enterprises that either had that peak in the summertime, given a charity that I was supporting had a gala, and they're opening up their wallets to donate, you're probably going to see a trend that's tapering, where it'll flatline for a bit before it sort of moves into recovery. But that time frame across the time horizon will really depend. Like, that's sort of the picture that I have been seeing from some of the experts that work in this field, where they're trying to advise nonprofits and charities and whatnot in that space of, now is time to ask for money. How you ask for money, how you get the money is going to be dependent on a number of variables and that sort of value you deliver. So you're going to probably see a big trend as well around how these types of organizations are framing their asks for support.
Right. Now, you talked about the digital technologies replacing the personal communication that we were having you as usual for centuries. Now, I've been into teaching, and there has been much of research and discussion going on. Now, most of the institutions, schools, colleges, they have been forced to replace their teaching by using the digital platforms. Now, they have been using technologies like Zoom and having virtual classes. But so few of the studies that have been carried out within the last few weeks or so are telling us that it hasn't turning out to be that much effective. Now, when you're using technology, that should go on hand in hand with something that you have, as you call it, as a personal experience. Now, having an experience of watching a movie, especially in India, in a theater, it's unreplaceable with what you can have watching it on your small phone on Netflix. So yeah, community experience. I think it is gonna come back again. People to people interactions would be coming back into again. Now, I would like to ask you about, you mentioned about 0% credit card facility is being rolled or is being given out by the government. Now, it is a form of derivative, I believe. Now, in 2008, when we had the economic crisis, so many products called as derivatives came out. So, do you think that, no, I don't know whether you will be willing to answer this question or not, because it's a out and out economic question. But now, say your government is issuing 0% credit card, and now after a year or so, people are not being able to repay it. What would happen with the banks?
So to be super clear, the 0% credit card came from that credit union, right? And so are you familiar with co-ops or credit unions?
No, no, not at all.
Okay. So there's the banks,
Mm-hmm.
that offer the typical banking services,
Right.
and their banks operate sort of on a federal level across Canada. Credit unions, up until a certain point, were only operating under their provincial guidelines, so within each of the 10 provinces if they existed. And credit unions are different in the sense that it's one member, one vote, so different than banks that are owned by shareholders. And sort of that's why the co-op model, as someone who works in social impact, you might be curious to learn more about co-ops
Right.
and credit unions. Though that type of business model is actually proven to be very sustainable over centuries, where it's very prevalent in Italy, in a region called Bologna, and basically it's a whole different discipline that you should definitely look into in terms of how those types of businesses are able to weather the storm. Now, what makes it unique is because it's one member, one vote, so it's all member owned. So if the four of us who are on this call are part of the credit union, we actually can make decisions around that. So they're able to mobilize decision making a lot quicker. And so they were the ones that were able to then offer, because essentially, if you're a member, you're the ones that's receiving the products and services directly from that credit union. So that organization exists to serve the members. So as a result, it is a bank for the peoples.
Right.
And so they can see what's happening and make that decision. And so to your question around what the future of the banking industry might look like, this is where it's really interesting around the sustainability of that model, is that with the banks, I mean, they have very deep pockets. So I suspect that the cost will be absorbed by individuals who utilize their services and products. Whereas with somebody like the credit union, they basically have that capacity to really just serve the members. So that I'm happy to send you a link where I used to work. They were the first financial institution in Canada to go carbon neutral. They were the first in Canada to allow women to vote. And to offer loans to women, to vote for the board of directors, but to offer loans to women without a male cosigner. So up until that point in time, and that was sort of in the 70s, women could not get a loan to buy a house or anything without a male cosigner. So I do think that that 0%, that's why the banks haven't offered it yet, is because they can't weather the storm in the same way.
Jessica, just a second. I'm having some text from Komal. Now she wants us to reconnect in a minute or so, because she at her system is facing some issue. She's recording. Can we join in again within a minute?
So Deep, I do have to run because I have another call that I've just kind of pushed off, but I'm happy to chat with you again and
Sure.
follow up.
Yeah, definitely.
Is that
That would be
okay?
great. So, Jessica, thank you very much for joining us.
I hope it was
And
helpful. Again, a lot of it is just my own opinions and things that I've been sort of allowing to read, but closing off as well too.
actually, it was great, and you have given us some great insights. And what we were expecting, you have given us so much more than that in terms of information. and it was all exhaustive. Now I have had few questions with for you, but and we were planning it for 25-30 minutes. But you have given us so much information that I think our viewers would definitely would love it and would get something out of it.
Yeah, no, feel free to reach out again, and I'd be happy to help. Like I mentioned, India is a place I do want to visit, so I hope this is over soon, and hopefully we'll get to meet Kamal and Vishal and yourself as well.
Exactly. We really hope that it gets over very soon and we could have you in India by the next year or very, very, very
Yeah,
soon.
stay safe, and best of luck
Yeah.
with your families, and yes, be safe.
Yeah. Be safe, Jessica, as well. Thank you very much again. Thanks a
No
lot.
problem. Okay, take care.
Bye
Bye.
bye.